Welcome to the Chief Procurement Officer Roundtable. My name is Vanessa Bowling Adjavon, and I'm the Director of Administration and Human Resources at HSAIR. I hope you're enjoying the symposium so far. And as a reminder, this is your final session to enter to win a new Dell laptop by posting on social media using the hashtag HSAIRSymposium21. In today's session, Chief Procurement Officers will explain how their operational duties have become essential to the success of diversity and inclusion strategies. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize our sponsor, Prudential. We would like to take this time to thank them for their continued support of HSAIR and the Hispanic community, and their dedication to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. I'd now like to introduce you to today's moderator, President and CEO of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and HSAIR Board Chair, Ramiro Cavazos. Thank you for being here today, Ramiro.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for the great work you do, the outstanding commitment to the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility, an executive on our team, and working closely with our President and CEO, Sid Wilson. It is my honor to serve as your moderator today. And Vanessa, it's a pleasure to work with you as the board chair. On behalf of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I want to thank our board chair, Alice Rodriguez, our board of directors, and our more than 260 Hispanic chambers of commerce from around the country and Puerto Rico who support and give voice to more than 5 million Hispanic-owned small businesses, collectively generating more than $800 billion in economic impact, working with more than 100 corporations investing in our nation's global future. As we enter Hispanic Heritage Month, it is very clear to us that our symposium at the HSAIR organization, this annual symposium on procurement, is all the more important than it's ever been as we rebuild our economy and as we create wealth and commerce for all of our communities, and a rising tide lifts all boats. So it's an honor to serve as your moderator. Today, we have this outstanding panel. I've gotten to know each of our three panel members. Each of them is a rock star within their corporation and very passionate about the work that they do. We have with us today Elena Marziano. She's with Procter & Gamble, and she will be introducing herself shortly, along with, of course, Bonnie Clinton, who's with Toyota Motor North America, and then Dr. Karmitria Burton with McDonald's. All three are excellent leaders, C-suite leaders and executives within their corporation. We're very honored to have each of them today talk about the importance of course, procurement, equity, inclusion, and diversity in today's world as we move forward. So without further ado, I'm going to ask, of course, our great friend, Ana Elena, to start us out, introduce herself, and then we'll follow up with Ms. Burton and, of course, with Ms. Clinton. Thank you so much, Ana Elena, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Ramiro, and thank you to you and Vanessa for having me here. It's great to be back this year. My name is Ana Elena Marciano. I'm the Chief Purchasing Officer for Procter & Gamble. I lead the global purchasing organization for the company that includes all of the company's sourcing, procurement, and raw and packing material planning. This whole community of what I call purchasing professionals is responsible for every dollar spent across the entire company in every single spend pool that we buy for P&G.
Well, thank you so much. We will go next to Ms. Clinton.
Good morning, everybody. So happy to be here. So as you heard, Bonnie Clinton, and I'm with Toyota Motor North America. And my area of responsibility is what I call the Indirect Procurement Shared Services. And simply put, that means basically everything that goes into running a business, but not the things that go into building the vehicles. That's probably the easiest way to divide the work. I have a counterpart that handles all the direct raw materials and materials that go into building the vehicles. And we handle all the spend for, all the indirect side. As I said, basically everything, goods and services it takes to run the business. And I've been with Toyota for 23 years, and it's just been a fabulous journey, and I really appreciate being included in this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Dr. Burton.
Well, hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with my other corporate partner peers. I'm Karmitria Burton, Senior Director of Global Supplier Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the McDonald's Corporation. And what that means is I'm responsible for ensuring the company has an inclusive supply chain process to include all those diverse vendors as we support diversity, equity, and inclusion, which supplier diversity is a pillar of our overall strategy. Currently, McDonald's, our current diversity spend is over 23% with diverse businesses. And if you know about best practices, that exceeds the best practice percentage across the industry and in the marketplace. So we're really proud of the work that we do in supply chain with diverse vendors. And I'm happy to be here to be a part of this active conversation.
Thank you, Carmitria, for the successful work that you're doing and setting the standard for all companies throughout the marketplace. When you think of McDonald's, Toyota, and of course, Procter & Gamble, that's the breadbasket of our economy. And so thank you all so much for making time for us today. I have the honor of asking each of you some questions for about 25 minutes. And then we're going to open it up to some question and answer from our audience. So I want to thank everyone that's joined us on this platform, supporting ASER and the work that we do to be more inclusive and provide more equity throughout the country, especially in corporate America. My first question is, of course, to our great friend Ana Elena with Procter & Gamble. Ana Elena, is one of our 4 pillars, procurement at ASER is an important issue to discuss, of course, issues of diversity in corporate America. How would you articulate the value of supplier diversity to your corporation's performance from a leadership, stakeholder, and a community perspective? Thank you so much.
It's a great question. Listen, at P&G, we have had a supplier diversity program for over 40 years in the US, and now in the last recent years, we've been working on increasing our spending on our program, expanding that to minority-owned suppliers around the world. And then this effort around the world specifically is about women and women-owned led companies, because we believe that, that's important that we expand the program and have it not only in North America. We're a global company, so we want to be around. We strongly believe that supplier diversity is good for our consumers, is good for our business, and this is why we're building supplier diversity within our business strategies. We know, and it's being clearly demonstrated, that a diverse organization and a supply base that is diverse brings more creativity, brings the agility, brings better innovation. And as such, we need So at the end of the day, we want to meet our consumer needs, and we believe diversity is a huge element of that. I would also say that we believe this is a corporate responsibility. Clearly, consumers all around the world are expecting more from the companies they buy products from, and the brands that, the companies that are behind the brands they buy. And we believe to meet our consumers' expectations, we have a responsibility to work on diversity. We call it all in, we call it impact sourcing. It's part of one of the leg of the impact sourcing strategy we established for the company. So the short answer is it's incredibly important, it's business essential, it's part of our business strategy.
Thank you, Ana Elena, for starting us out. Great answer to, I know, a question that's so important today. My next question is, of course, to Bonnie Clinton. And Bonnie, I personally am very familiar with Toyota's commitment to diversity and equity. I had the honor of working in Texas to recruit the Toyota motor manufacturing plant to San Antonio about 15 years ago. So I'm dating myself here, but your commitment to tier 1 suppliers and tier 2 and tier 3 and building that supply chain, which was brand new in Texas, has really shown your commitment to building equity and diversity. And so my question, Bonnie, I know you handle everything that doesn't go in a truck, a Tundra or a Toyota, but I wanted you to share how companies like Toyota use procurement to reduce structural inequality in the corporate sector by really working hard to reach out to small minority and women-owned businesses. So Bonnie, again, thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you. That's a great question. I think what's so important is that the key focus for procurement is to really ensure that any potential supplier is capable of successfully performing and delivering on what the company needs. That's really, really important. And I know that, certifications are very important. I do think it's really important that we have certification process to ensure that there's equity and to ensure that there are standards. That's important because that's the way that corporations monitor and measure supplier diversity progress. It provides that consistent, the parameters have to be consistent, and it provides that ability for us to have that consistency to measure things all along the process. One of the things I think that's so important is that companies have to be able to leverage the procurement function because we are critical influencers and decision makers, and we raise the visibility of capable, diverse suppliers where corporations may not be aware of that. When we think about it, that's really our calling, one of our callings. And a lot of the other functional areas across the company are busy doing what they do best. And so we have the job of doing the research and making sure that we're reaching far and wide, creating windows of opportunity and creating that equity and that balance of supply, a diverse supply chain within our organizations. And, in my mind, that's really key. That's one of the values that procurement brings because it is our core strength and that is what we focus on. I think many times that, corporations and decision makers, they're focused on that other business issue and running the business. And, it's not a criticism, but they sometimes fall into the path of taking the easy way and, kind of jumping to a decision and not challenging the status quo. And I think that we all need to be reminded to be open to looking at new ways of getting our work done and leveraging procurement in that process. And I think that's one of the things that procurement really brings to the table and focusing on really providing that fair level playing field for diverse suppliers to enter the business with corporations.
Thank you, Bonnie. Appreciate your answer. Dr. Burton, my 12-year-old will not go to McDonald's without ordering the big breakfast with pancakes, by the way. And so I just wanted to thank you for fulfilling his need. And I know you have a great, powerful story of involving diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just in your workforce, not just in your franchise owners, but your focus is procurement. And if you could tell us within your scope, your function, which you lead, how you advance diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, because you work with small business owners, minority and women-owned businesses, and that's really the lifeblood of our economy. So if you could share some of the best practices that you all use, Dr. Burton, we'd appreciate it.
Well, thanks your son for enjoying the big breakfast. My favorite is a fish fillet. I'm sure we all have our McDonald's story, whether you've worked there before or whatever your favorite combo is. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, supplier diversity is here to stay. As we think about supply chains are so critical. was reflecting on COVID last year and watching CNN. And like many of you, I heard the word supply chain so much in so much of the commentary. There were shortage of masks, shortage of gloves, shortage of PPE equipment. And that was due to so much demand on supply chains. So supply chains are critical now more than ever, because if you think about it, the supply chain is really what satisfies the customer, whether it's a product or service. And because many corporations don't have their own supply chain, they use suppliers to help them fulfill those commitments. And so as I think about using diverse businesses to fill those commitments, there are several best practices that I've have experience with. One is developing and coaching minority businesses. A lot of programs have MBE development. And I think that's so critical because when businesses respond to RFPs or respond to RFIs and they don't win the business, there's usually not a communication gap that's closed. So the business never knows, well, why didn't I win? How could I have closed the gap? And I think it's important for corporations to give those small businesses feedback so they can be bigger, better, faster for not only that company, but other companies that they may bid for. So MBE development is critical. The other one that I think is important, and these are just a few best practices, are setting goals within the corporation and having a policy. We all know, what matters get measured. And so it's important that you set those goals. Once you set those goals, hopefully you have an executive champion in place and a policy that's enforced across the enterprise that says any procurement activity will include a diverse vendor. And then one that I'm also a fan of is communication. I have seen so many corporations that are doing well in supplier diversity, and they may take the humility approach by not talking about it. But I think internally, your employees would appreciate the story, and externally, the suppliers in the marketplace want to know what you're doing and how they can be a part of the success. So MBE development, setting goals and a policy with executive sponsorship, and communicating internally and externally are a few best practices that I've practiced and have had great results with.
Thank you, Carmitria. Great answer. I'll have to try the fish sandwich the next time I go to my McDonald's. So thank you for the solid instruction for MBEs. We tell them when they don't get that first contract not to give up, to learn from their mistakes and come back stronger, as you said, bigger and better, and really strengthen their pitch to be successful. So thank you for that guidance. I'd like to go back to Elena. Elena, I know you've been with Procter & Gamble and done important work, as you stated at the beginning, across so many sectors. And I wanted to ask you what areas of partnership that you could identify related to diversity, equity, and inclusion excites you the most, working with employee resource groups. Also, if you could share some insights, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, listen, again, as I said, we've been working on tracking and working on supplier diversity for many years. And that basically covers, tracking spend, first tier mainly, and then taking it to second tier. What we are doing now is to expand the influence to our entire ecosystem. And let me explain what that means. We internally, we call it the employee program pillar of our own diversity and inclusion strategy within the company. And we believe on equal representation. We believe on policies. We believe on giving access and opportunity to our own employees, right? Because we wanna have an organization that represents the consumers we're serving. If you take that and you expand to our entire supply ecosystem, you can only imagine and envision the ripple effect that this will create. So no matter whether our suppliers are minority-owned or majority-owned, if they start implementing themselves equality and inclusion strategies, policies, and equal pay, equal representation, just imagine the ripple effect we create, right? And how much can we help communities and make an impact? So I'm going back to the impact sourcing that I was mentioning before. So that is really exciting, right? It's not only tracking how many of our suppliers are minority owned, which is incredibly important. And we have very, very ambitionary goals to continue advancing our spend with minority-owned suppliers, but it's also how we take those programs and initiatives and strategies and we expand to our 60,000+ suppliers that we have in our total ecosystem. So again, it's exciting when you think of the possibilities, when you think of what we can do and the effect and the impact we can have in communities around the world, if you take this around the world.
Thank you, Ana Elena. My next question would be to Bonnie, Ms. Clinton. From a competitive landscape, I know personally one of your tier 1 suppliers who serves on our board of directors. Her name is Rosa Santana. She does the actual tier 1 work within 2 plants, one in Mexico, one in Texas, but there's a process to get into companies like Procter & Gamble, McDonald's, and of course, Toyota. And it takes a lot of hard work and preparation, as we've been discussing. And so how does a new, unknown Hispanic-owned business begin to start doing business with your company, with Toyota, for example? What type of guideposts would you share with them, Bonnie, that could be helpful to get them on their pathway to success?
I appreciate that question. That's a great question, because I know I get asked that a lot when I go to different events. And, I'll acknowledge it. It can be a challenge. And I don't think there's an easy answer. And I don't think there's just one golden arrow, bullet, what have you, that's the sure thing. But I think it's really important, first of all, that suppliers be honest and take a good look at themselves and say, where do you fit into the equation? Because you can't be the expert in every area. So for example, if you're a small tech firm and you have 20 employees, you're not likely to win the bid to implement an enterprise-wide ERP system on your own. That's not likely because of the scale and the complexity of that kind of work. But there are options, and there are a few things that you can think about to get your foot in the door. And what I suggest is, think of getting that when you think of getting that first contract, think of it as akin to kind of getting your first job. You start out small in an entry-level position and you build your way up by proving your capability. Another way is, you partner with another supplier as a tier 2 to that tier 1. That helps you learn and build capacity and develop a track record. Another option is to partner with another company and build your portfolio through a joint venture. And that will then give you the ability to scale quicker. So I think what's really important, I guess my bottom line message is to really look at what your capability is and how you fit in to the work that corporations are looking for. Because the last thing you want to do is try to come in and do something that you're not capable of fulfilling and fail at that opportunity, because it will be very, very difficult to regain that footing and get more business and be able to have that company be a reference for you in the future. You want to have wins. You want to make sure that the odds are stacked in your favor. So I would just say, I think you have to, as I said, just each situation, you have to look at it and look at how you fit into the equation. And I think honesty and truly looking at yourself and what your capabilities are is a really good first step.
Thank you so much for that great answer. We're going to start with our Q&A a little bit early. I'm monitoring the chat, and I know you all as panel members have access to some of the questions coming in. We have 3 great questions already, and I wanted to ask Dr. Burton. She has volunteered to answer one of these questions, and I believe it's this next one, Carmitria. It's how can companies leverage their vendors to adopt diversity and inclusion policies that align with each of your companies? Thank you again for allowing me to jump with a Q&A early.
I think large corporations should begin to position themselves to use their brand and their scale for good. So when you think about Procter & Gamble, when you think about Toyota, when you think about McDonald's, those are big brands, right? We have the scale to make change in our communities. And our mutual commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, if you think about tier 2, it's tier 2 exponentially. So our mutual commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is a pledge that we've asked our vendors to commit to 3 areas. The first area is, do you provide diversity, equity, and inclusion to your employees, right? Do you have a diverse leadership team? And if so, or if not, do you have any type of mentoring programs that will help you coach and mentor and level up minority employees? The other pillar is, what are you doing with diverse vendors? And how many have you increased your diverse vendors by? And then the last one is, what are you doing in the way of innovative partnerships? So we are using our brand and our scale for good. We are asking our suppliers to sign this pledge. Again, it's mutual commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's just our way of bringing our suppliers along in the DE&I journey. Now, you know, all suppliers are at different levels in their DE&I journey, right? So we at McDonald's will help them along the way. And that's going to be through white papers, thought leadership, training and coaching sessions to help them on those 4 areas that I just mentioned to you. So I think corporations using the brand and the scale for good to create a long overdue societal change is the next best practice, in my opinion.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor, for taking that question. I will open it up to any of our 2 other panel members if they wanted to add anything to your thoughts on that.
I would love to, because I think Carmita said it extremely well. And it's an area where we have, I think, a huge opportunity and a huge impact to make. We are masters of relationships and influencing in procurement, right? That's one of our, strength as a discipline. And I think here is where we can practice that the best. I mentioned before the whole supply ecosystem, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. But Carmita said it extremely well in terms of being very specific on what are we asking these suppliers to work on. And every time, I'll give you an example, every time we meet with them, starting with top to tops, business leaders down, we ask them to come prepare with a very clear statement of what are the actions and what are they doing regarding diversity and inclusion. What are they doing with their supplier diversity program? What are the policies they're implementing for their own companies? What is the diversity of their employee population? They come to meetings and we point out when we don't see diverse leadership, right? So we're walking the talk, but we're also making them to walk with us on this and be part of the journey, because as I said before, when you think about the ripple effect that corporations like us can have in the entire communities, it's just incredible. And it's the new phase. That's what we have to do, and that's what we have to work on. And we need to be very specific with our suppliers on what are we expecting them to do, and we have the means and the scale to influence that.
Thank you, Ana Elena. Great answers. Bonnie, anything you'd like to add to that?
just one comment, so well said, Anna Elena and Dr. Karmitria, very similar thoughts and approaches that Toyota takes. The one thing I would share that we do that we've seen a significant impact on, and that is we hold an annual event with our tier 1 suppliers. Not only do we ask them as part of their responsibility to do tier 2 reporting to make sure that we're extending that reach, but we also hold an event every year at no cost to them. And we invite tier 2 suppliers to come in and meet with our tier 1s so that they have the chance to do a meet and greet face to face. Obviously, last year, this year it's virtual, but it's called the Opportunity Exchange. And so there's no reason, there's no excuse because they're not paying for it, but we're asking them to participate. But it is one way that we, put our best foot forward and say, we want to make sure that our tier 1s know that we really, when we say we want them to work with tier 2s, diverse suppliers, that we are also helping to create that landscape for that to happen. And that to me has been, such a tremendous event, and so proud of all the relationships that have been established through that. And I think, those kinds of actions and activities that large corporations can do really demonstrate not only the ask, but helping the work get done to the next level.
Bonnie, thank you for mentioning that example of that big event, that exchange that you put together. I've attended your event before, and it's very helpful to the point that you all are making about building those relationships with the key staff within corporations and get the coaching and the mentorship that they need to get to that level to be a supplier in the future. So thank you for that answer and that example. We are getting some great questions in the chat. And if you all don't mind, I'd love to open up this next question to Dr. Burton. The pandemic, and then have each of you also weigh in if you'd like. This came from our audience. The pandemic has had an impact on Hispanic and diverse businesses. Can you talk about how you've adapted to supporting businesses, especially diverse businesses, given the obstacles that were created by the pandemic? Dr. Burton. You're on mute again. Thank you.
I'm sorry, my dog is barking, so that's why I keep muting. Thank you. Great question. One thing I can tell suppliers, during the pandemic and now is don't go dark. If you need help, if you need support, this is the right time to reach out to your corporate partners and your other small business owners. There is strength in numbers. And we can help you with resiliency strategies. And I think the one thing that corporations can do is, one, begin to foster relationship with private equity firms that you can introduce to the small businesses. You never know where that relationship may go. So I think as a corporation, we should broker relationships with our small business community during this time. The other is introduce them to other suppliers in your supply chain that could be in the same space or not in the same space as a peer-to-peer conversation, right? This is a mentoring opportunity for one business owner to talk to the next business owner on how are you getting through COVID? How are you restructuring your business? What is your business going to look like as a result of that? And then thirdly, I think corporations, we're business professionals, use this as a coaching and mentoring opportunity. There's something we can say to business owners that can help them with their business through our lens of experience. So whatever it is, small business owner, don't go quiet, don't go dark, ask for help. There are people out there that are willing to support you through resources and connections.
Thank you. Great answer. Bonnie, any thoughts on that question?
I think well said. I think one thing we all knew is that procurement was really important in making sure the supply chain was running smoothly. And I think what we all saw was that COVID proved it. It became very transparent of the role that procurement takes. And I know for us, we reached out proactively to our suppliers and said, how are you doing? What is your day supply? What areas of risk do you see? What can we do to make sure that we're addressing any issues and concerns, early on? And I think that's really important. As Dr. Karmitria said, it's really about open dialogue and trust. And we have a saying at Toyota, we say bad news first. We want to hear the bad news, the challenges, the issues, so that we can quickly address them. Don't brush them under the rug. Don't try to, hide them, because what will happen is they will just blow up. And so I think, that's really key. Open dialogue and, being a supportive corporation, building that trust, continuing to feed that trust with our diverse suppliers and all of our suppliers across the supply chain.
Thank you, Ms. Clinton. I know that each of you on the panel leads procurement for a global company. The challenges are real, and I wanted to ask the next question, also coming from our audience, and ask Ana Elena to start us out. Do you observe similar diversity and inclusion in procurement practices around the world from your perspective, or is it primarily something that for now is more prominent in North America? It's a great question. Ana Elena, could you start us out with that answer? Thank you so much.
Yeah, listen, the concept of diversity and minority-owned suppliers probably started in the US, the way we understand it, right? But it's been expanding outside of the US, mainly to women-owned businesses. And we have expanding this because it's really important. It's part of our diversity profile that we have women-owned, women-led corporations, and we have great, global support in different parts of the world. We Connect is an ally of us, and they help tremendously, just to mention one, to help us identifying who are those potential suppliers. So the short answer is it's very strong in the US, but we cannot stop there, especially for corporations that are global. And as I said, diversity and inclusion is part of our DNA. We take it internally and we want to expand to our entire ecosystem. And as such, we need, and we are very intentionally looking for expanding the concept to other parts of the world. There are some few limitations in very few parts of the world in terms of how we classify, what we do, but that doesn't stop us. We do it what is right. And we look for, again, outside of North America, we're very intentional on women-owned and women-led. So it's expanding, and we should not limit to the US.
Thank you, Ana Elena. Dr. Burton or Bonnie, any thoughts on that question?
None for me. Well said.
Thank you. Well, then I'll ask another question from the chat that, quite frankly, is kind of the mystery question for all businesses: certification. Even we at the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we've been asked by folks, "Are y'all certifying firms?" And I said, "Well, that's not our lane. That's not. We connect people. We refer people. We advocate at the policy level for the U.S. government and, of course, corporate America to engage with best practices with diversity, equity, inclusion. But when you look at corporate America, certification is a critical piece to ensure that potential suppliers are, in fact, who they say they are, and that they're able to deliver. And we love to tell people, if you're going to get that contract, deliver, because you want to make everybody look good, especially if you're a small minority or women-owned business. So one of the questions in our chat, and I'll open it up to any one of you all on the panel, is what can corporations do to ease the certification process for potential suppliers, and what are the best practices? What are some examples? Maybe share your opinion of where certification may be going, because as we talked, a lot of corporations, sometimes certification itself is seen as an impediment to procurement opportunities for a corporation, especially because of the pandemic, in moving swiftly. Who would like to go maybe try to answer this question? Yes, Dr. Burton, thank you.
Wow, certification. One of the things that corporations can do to help that process is dispel the myths right off, right? So I've talked to several small businesses. They don't want to get certified because of what they've heard or what they think the process is. So I think, corporations, we should be informed of what that process looks like, and coach the suppliers through the process, and then connect them with your local NMSDC or WeBank or NGLCC or whatever area they're going to become certified in. Many corporations, small business owners are requiring certification. Certification, in my opinion, is the standard. It speaks to the ownership of your business, but it does not speak to the capability of your business. So if you get certified, right, it's not an entitlement. It's just the first check, right? You are on your way to doing business with corporate America or government or whoever it is that requires the certification. And again, it's the standard for us. It lets us know that you are a viable minority-owned business, 51% owned, managed, controlled, and operated within that diversity space. Now, once you become certified, you have to prove that you have the scale, scope, and capability to partner with a corporation. So I would say corporations can help by dispelling the myths of what it means to be certified. And then small businesses, once you become certified, it doesn't just stop there. It's not an entitlement. There are other areas that you'll need to prove your business to corporations.
Thank you, Doctor. Great guidance. Bonnie?
Yeah, I would just say, 100% to those comments. We stand right beside you there with everything. It is the standard. It is the way that we validate the reporting that we do. And if we're all to be held accountable, we need to have some mechanism to create that consistency and to demonstrate, that this is how we're tracking and maintaining our reporting. So definitely that is the first step, and it's very important. I would absolutely say, one thing I would say that I really think that councils provide great help is that education process. So dispelling the myth is really important for corporations to endorse their local council and say, go learn about the truth. But councils many of them hold informational sessions and will help you understand what that process looks like and what to expect when you actually go through certification so that you'll be well prepared. So don't fear the unknown. Go out and find the truth and go get educated about the process before you shortchange yourself and make a decision that won't benefit you.
Great. Thank you.
I was going to add just one comment because I completely agree with everything being said. Extremely well said. But likewise, so as was said, right, it's not an entitlement. Certification is not entitlement. At the same time, if the company is bringing value, distinguishing themselves, and providing unique value to the business, the fact that it's not certified will not put them out in the race and will have same opportunity to compete for the business. Then the certification comes an additional element of value. So what I'm trying to say is the certification is needed to validate the minority piece of that, but the value needs to be there no matter what. And that's what was said before. I just want to reinforce because I find this point to be extremely important.
Well, each of you has answered this question with clarity and honesty, and I appreciate that. We talk to many small minority and women-owned businesses that go through that certification process. And we do our best to share with them that I think, as Dr. Burton said, it's just another check mark to get you to that opportunity to be considered. But we preach that we need to provide those businesses the 3 C's at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. To be successful, you need to have your capability to deliver on a product or service, and that includes certification. You also need capital to make sure that you have the resources to deliver on that product. If you do get that purchase order, you need to make sure that we deliver. And then obviously, we also help them with the connections that they need to, partners and relationships and companies with procurement leaders such as yourselves to give them that coaching. So we call it the 3 C's: the capital, capacity building, and of course, contracting. If you can make a solid contribution with all of those 3 areas, you will be in good position to be successful, obviously, in the public or private sector. One of the questions on our chat also obviously relates to procurement, and it relates to, I think, the partnerships or the mentorship programs that some corporations have to really guide smaller businesses to be more successful. And procurement, it can be very relationship driven, as you all know. And I wanted to ask each of you, this also came from our audience, can you share any recommendations on how diverse suppliers can cultivate relationships with large companies that can lead to opportunities later on for business? What are some examples of businesses that have been successful that have gone through that process, in y'all's opinion?
Well, maybe I'll start off with when you talked about mentorship. So I think mentorship is a really strong avenue. If I do know that there are some councils that have mentorship programs. So, for example, the Dallas-Fort Worth Minority Business Council that I am a member of and chair, we have a mentorship program. And I think that is a tremendous avenue and a program to definitely take advantage of. We also have programs that some corporations have mentorship programs that they sponsor. And I don't know all of them, but I do know that Toyota has a WeBank program that we sponsor, Women Minority Business, enterprises. And so I think, you have to develop relationships, but start to educate yourself about what is out there so that you can take advantage of these programs. I think that's what's really key. One of the things that I would love to see more of, candidly, across, whether it's through councils or businesses, I would love to see mentoring in regard to helping small businesses become certified. I think that is really important, because I think once you're certified, you do develop that ability to you kind of enter the next level and have the ability to network in a different way. So I think that's something that, in my mind, I'd like to see grow in the coming years. But I think, it's really arm yourself with as much information as you can so that you know what's out there. And then you can take advantage of those kinds of programs and relationships from that point.
Thank you, Bonnie, for that coaching. Dr. Burton or Ana Elena, any thoughts on that question?
I would advise small businesses to develop a relationship, diverse businesses, with the supplier diversity leader. That is their role and their function in procurement, and most of them sit in procurement. And you develop the relationship with them. I have a personal story where a vendor would call me every month on the 9th. It took me a while to figure out the methodology, right? I mean, this guy was so persistent, and I really admired it, because when he would call me, he would always inform me of the new ways or the new contracts or the new people he hired or the new systems. So I saw a very nice progression with his business. And so the monthly calls then went to quarterly calls. But my point is he was persistent. There was a methodology behind it. Finally, he was able to come in and bid on business. It took him 3 years to get to that point. So don't get discouraged. Keep the relationship going by just informing your corporate person at those corporations on new clients, new business, new technology, new strategic partnerships. We like hearing that. And the supplier diversity person should be your advocate within that organization. So keep a relationship, be persistent, but be patiently persistent.
Great coaching.
If I can add a little bit of a different perspective, and it all works depending on the company structure, right? I completely agree that the supplier diversity leader of the company at Procter & Gamble, Nalini Bates, is our star, and she has amazing relationships and she brings to the table all the opportunities. So everything being said is correct in my view, with one add. We are organized by organization units, what we call OUs. And I would say that I really encourage minority-owned suppliers to also develop the relationship with the OU leader in purchasing, because that is going to give us the double click on what is absolutely needed to meet the needs of that particular OU. And the needs of, in our case, right, the needs of beauty care will be completely different than the needs of fabric and home care or baby and femme. So you need the specifics, you need the double down, and you need someone to be in the business to guide you to what is important for that particular supply chain. The second point I would add is something we are trying to push and foster, is because we are embedding supplier diversity into the business strategy. So the OU that I was talking about, they have a supplier diversity strategy embedded in their strategies. We're also putting senior leaderships to be sponsoring some of these relationships. And that helps tremendously on both sides, because it shows us, right, all the challenges that minority-owned suppliers have. But it also helps translating the consumer needs and the business needs to the smaller suppliers, so they can go back, do the homework, and figure out how they will be providing unique value. So it helps on both sides, helps with the relationships, helps on driving clarity, transparency, trust in the relationship. And so again, it's both ends. And I think being connected with the business, at least in my case, is extremely important.
Thank you, Ana Elena. Well, I want to thank you, Ana Elena, and I want to thank you, Bonnie, and of course you, Carmitria, for your outstanding input and advice today for our small minority and women-owned businesses. On behalf of the ACER organization, the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility, founded in 1986 by national groups, including the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, to advocate for creating opportunities in corporate America, not just for C-suite executives and board positions, but also procurement opportunities. You all represent one of those four pillars. And in my opinion, I want to share that each of you could be the president and CEO of your corporation. And that's our vision, our bold vision at the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, that women of color can achieve that rightful place in corporate, in global corporate environments, using your procurement background to obviously deliver in the C-suite and lead a multi-trillion-dollar organization in the future. So thanks to each of you for serving as chief procurement officers within your company and for joining us today on this roundtable as a speaker for the ACER annual symposium. At this time, as we begin to wrap up, I want to thank everyone that's joined us and asked outstanding questions to provide input. I'd like to, at this time, if it's still possible, to allow each of our three representatives to give final comments on this panel, and then we will kick it back to Vanessa to close us out. We have a couple of minutes, and maybe each of you could give some closing remarks, maybe for 30 seconds or a minute, and then I will wrap up and share this back with Vanessa. And again, it's been my privilege to be with each of you and to meet and learn more about the powerful work that you do on behalf of our minority business community. So thank you again for joining us. Why don't we start out with you, Bonnie?
Sure, and thank you, Ramiro. What a honor it's been to have you facilitate this. So maybe two areas of comment to wrap up. For corporations, I would just say, you know what? You say it, you do it, you show it. You have to set corporate goals. You have to have top-down support and commitment. You've got engaged management across the organization, and you have to set targets. And you need to be transparent. Make sure the program is visible and measurable, and report the progress and get the results throughout the year. And for the suppliers, I would say, you know what? Do your research. Know your customer, know your industry and competition. You got to focus on your capability. What makes you stand out from your competition is critically important. You have to, identify what value have you brought to other customers and explain that. If how you intend to not only win the business and earn the business, but to improve and continue to innovate. And I would just say, be relevant. How are you addressing current events? We talked about COVID. For example, if you're a staffing company, how are you addressing labor shortage today? If you're a consumer-facing company, how are you handling PII? Because states have different requirements. If you're an IT company, what are you doing around security and cybersecurity? All those things that are so, continue to bring complexity and challenges to corporations. Because you are the experts in your field, and you need to be able to convey that and demonstrate that to corporations, because corporations' job is to focus on their core business, and they are sourcing goods and services because they're looking for someone who can do it better, faster, and cheaper than they can. And that's what corporations are paying you for.
Thank you, Bonnie. We have about a minute left. Dr. Burton and Ana Elena.
Listen, I'll be super, super fast. I will say a couple of things. One is supplier diversity has to be a business strategy. It has to be embedded in the business. It cannot be done by purchasing. We drive it. We build the relationships. But the only way to advance in corporations is to make it part of the business strategy. And for minority-owned suppliers, never give up. And push back and show what is the unique value you bring to the table. You need to demonstrate that. You need to be on top of your game, and you need to build relationships.
Well said.
For me, corporations, diversity is an investment. There's a misnomer that if you do business with a diverse supplier, you're going to pay more, you're going to get less quality. That is not always the case. Companies that practice diversity just do better. So we need to start looking at diversity as an investment. And to my small business owners, know your value proposition. If you were in the room with the key decision maker, how are you going to make them lean in to want to know your business in less than 45 seconds? Stating your value very quickly and allowing people to lean in to invite you to learn even more about your business.
Thank you, Dr. Burton. Well said. Vanessa, back to you. Thanks to each of you.
Thank you so much, Ramiro, Carmitria, Bonnie, and Ana Elena. I think I speak for all of us when I say we are so happy you could join us today and share your insights. Up next, we will give you a chance to network with your fellow attendees and panelists, and someone will win a laptop from our giveaway sponsor, Dell. Please head to the networking lounge to join us right now. See you there.